Greetings everyone. Welcome to Narayana IAS. This is Chaitanya. This is the daily news analysis in which we select certain articles from the Hindu as well as Indian Express and do the detailed analysis. The articles that have been chosen are as follows. First, an India out plan that could impact the Maldives. It is from the Hindu page number 6. Next, CAA rules may be notified before LokSabha polls. It's from the Hindu page number 1. Next, free movement regime at Myanmar border to end soon. Entry into India will need visa. It's from the Hindu page number 1. Next, America's biggest climate failures. It is from the Indian Express page number 14. Next, another eye in sky on ground. India is now part of largest radio telescope project. It's from the Indian Express page number 1. Now, let us start our analysis. This article is on India-Maldives relation. As you know, recently Maldivian government has taken various steps that are against the interests of India, that are against the strong relationship which has been built by the previous establishment of Maldives. There is a necessity for us to understand why this has become a battle. Sometimes our relationship are stronger with Maldives, sometimes they are not. As what it indicates is ultimately our relationship are connected or linked to the domestic politics of Maldives. This is not a sustainable way to make the international relations with the other countries. So there are certain lessons that India should learn at the same time, even Maldives should learn to improve its international stature as well as its domestic development as well. That is what we are trying to assess through this article. The title of the topic is An India Out Plan That Could Impact Maldives. So, Maldives is taking steps to see that the presence of India in Maldives is lower, at the same time to reduce the relationship strength. Why it is taking is what we are also going to see in this particular article. Relevance of the topic is understanding India-Maldives relationship and from UPSC syllabus, Mains GS paper 2 International Relations. We have previous year questions on these topics as well. For example, discuss the political developments in Maldives in the last 2 years. Should they be of any concern to India? So, you cannot completely isolate international relations from the domestic politics. The previous year question asked by UPSC is a testament to it. So, what is the context here? Context is the India out plank played by the Maldives, the present Maldivian establishment. How we could assess it is through the recent steps taken by the Maldives. For example, Maldivian government has taken a decision to not renew the 2019 hydrographic agreement. So, hydrography agreement is an agreement through which India could conduct hydrography survey in the oceanic waters which surrounds the Maldives. This actually provides us the required information to understand oceanic profile, which ultimately enable us to understand the ecology of waters. At the same time, it gives us information which will be helpful for Navy of India as well to improve its abilities, capabilities. Because the profile of ocean gives us the information that could be utilized to improve or enhance the naval capabilities. It might be stealth attacks or it might be to understand the movements of the enemies, thus reducing the capability of Indian Navy. At the same time, the ability to understand the ecology of the Indian Ocean. And Maldives have already asked New Delhi to pull out its Indian military presence. Thus, this too has reduced the India's stature and standing in the Indian Ocean region, as well as reducing its military strength to display its dominance in the Indian Ocean region. Indian Ocean region is the region that surrounds India, and maintaining strength here is of paramount importance. Next, the other thing we have noticed with Mali, that is the Maldives, is it has skipped the India's invitation to attend Colombo Security Dialogue. Instead, it has attended Indian Ocean Forum, which has been organized by China. This itself shows that it is playing India-China card. So this is a worry. If China becomes closer to Maldives, it ultimately impacts the interests of India in the Indian Ocean. it is with regards to security, economy, or politics. In all ways, it is damaging to India. Thus, there is a necessity for us to strengthen the relationship with Maldives. Now, the basic concerns. The basic concerns is the power of asymmetry. India is such a huge power. Either it might be economy, either it might be politics, either it might be the population. It is huge in its size. Thus, there is asymmetry of power. India's power is far higher when compared to its neighboring states. That is true even with Maldives as well. Whenever such equation arises, the countries try to play the India-China card or whatever the big brothers that are in play in this particular context. For example, if there is United States-Russia, the countries try to play this card to gain benefits from both the countries. Even this might be true with regards to Maldives as well. And if you look at the Nepal, again and again we witness this India-China card being played by the establishment to gain attention of both the countries. Whereas asymmetry is one of the reasons why there is a possibility that even India is witnessing these issues with Maldives as well. So that is why we need to follow the doctrine called Gujarat doctrine, where instead of playing a big brother attitude, there is the necessity for extending benefits to these countries without expecting anything in return. That could actually reduce the fears from these countries of the asymmetry of power. The asymmetry of power is nothing but the possibility that given the huge power differentials between both the countries, India will not impose its will upon these countries. Rather, it only extends benefit, and thus it is beneficial to these countries to continue positive relations with the power asymmetry rather than be fearful to India and try to bring in the third party like China into picture. This is one of the important strategies that India should adopt. Of course, India has always been a passive partner where it has extended developmental projects in these countries. Yet what we are witnessing recently is an issue that we have to reckon as quickly as possible. Then comes the influence of domestic politics over bilateral relations. So, in the past, when Sole was in power, we have seen India first policy adopted by Maldives. But now we are seeing India out campaign played extensively by Muizu. And Sole's true closeness with India might also be considered as one of the reasons for the rising anti-India sentiments in Maldives. Muizu has played into those sentiments and tried to capture the power, thus playing to his politics. Then comes the growing fundamentalism in Maldives, which is a concern. A report has shown recently of the growing radicalism in Maldives. Added to it, the invitation of the Maldives to the countries like Pakistan, Saudi, etc. has led to increased establishment of Islamic institutions which are alleged to have promoted the radicalization. This is also one of the reasons for increasing anti-India sentiments in the Maldives region. The 2007 blast in Maldives is a testament that radicalism is increasing. This has security threat to India as well as India's ability to maintain close relations with Maldives. We already referred to Gujarat doctrine, where India, instead of playing a big brother attitude, supposed to extend developmental projects. India has been doing it. For example, the Indira Gandhi Memorial Hospital, the Faculty of Engineering Technology, Faculty of Hospitality and Tourism. These are testament to India's gentle gestures to the countries, which especially surround our borders, as well as our littoral partners like Maldives. And this against the China's debt trap diplomacy. Yet countries are moving towards China. With China, through its huge debt trap diplomacy, is actually making the countries to go bankrupt and be completely dependent on China. Actually, it is China which is playing the big brother attitude instead of India. And even in the context of Indo-Pacific, if you observe, under UNCLOS, we are trying to uphold the international agreements. India is trying to uphold international agreements to establish peace, to see that there is code of conduct in Indian oceans. Whereas China is violating all these principles. That could be seen from the string of pearls through which China wants to encircle India and threaten its naval superiority in the Indian Ocean, as well as reduce its dominance in the Indian Ocean region, which is of huge security implication to India. That is why we have launched Necklace of Diamonds strategy to checkmate China with regards to the string of pearls strategy adopted by China. So all these are the indications of the way that the India-Maldives relationships are moving on. Despite the fact of gentle gestures by India, despite adopting Gujarat Doctrine. But the way forward is we need to adopt neighborhood first policy approach with political neutrality as central point. We need to see that the domestic politics of the neighboring states or the littoral states doesn't play out with regards to India's relationship with these countries. It might be Sri Lanka, it might be Nepal, it might be Maldives, or it might be Bangladesh. We have to be careful with regards to the strategies that India need to adopt to stabilize our relationships. And thus, we need to see that it becomes a diplomatic and political plank rather than the thorn that actually compromises India's interests. We have seen in the past where during the time of crisis, India has went its way and saved Maldives. Even during the COVID crisis, Maldives has reciprocated India and said that it supports India's UNSC membership, extending veto power to India. So we need to change our strategy to improvise relationship with the neighboring countries. This completes the article. Now let us look into another. This article is on Citizenship Amendment Act. Government is ready with the rules for implementing Citizenship Amendment Act. Citizenship Amendment Act has already been passed by the Parliament as bill. Thus, what we require is particular rules to implement this act. The issues are how these rules are prepared and how this is going to impact India, especially certain sections who are fearful of the possible consequences that arise on account of its implementation. There are fears that they will lose citizenship. There are fears that there is a possibility of clashes between various sections on account of implementation. There are fears that the demographics of a particular state might change on account of its implementation as well. So for that, we need detailing of the issues with this particular act that is a reason for a lot of worries among various sections. The title of the topic is Government Ready with Rules for CA, said to be notified before LokSabha polls announcement. According to the Government of India, it is one of the important issues that our country is facing. And thus, it is set to implement these rules. As you know, LokSabha polls are underway this year. Attainment of this goal is important for the present establishment. We are going to see the reason behind bringing this particular act and implementing in this country, and also the issues that we are facing. The relevance of the topic, we are going to deal with the substantial issues with the CAA and the syllabus GS Paper 2, Functions and Responsibilities of Union Government, GS Paper 3, Internal Security Challenges and Management. We have previous year questions on citizenship as well. With reference to India, consider the following statements. There is only one citizenship at one domicile. So this is one question. So you could expect questions on citizenship. The context is we have enacted Citizenship Amendment Act in December 2019. That is, it has got the parliamentary approval as well as presidential assent. Thus, it became an act. It has been 4 years and 8 extensions where the government has not been able to come up with the rules. But now it has brought the rules for implementing the Citizenship Amendment Act. What is the objective of Citizenship Amendment Act? The objective is to extend Indian citizenship to non-Muslims. And this is to the illegal immigrants. Thus, there are certain non-Muslim citizens of other countries or the people who are non-Muslims from other countries who have entered into India illegally. That is not through the legal channels. But yet we are trying to extend Indian citizenship to them. And these are from the countries Afghanistan, Bangladesh and Pakistan. Why? Because it is alleged that these countries persecute the minorities. And Muslims are the majoritarian sections in these countries. And thus, India has extended this particular privilege to non-Muslim sections from these countries. And the date has been set as December 31st, 2014. Now, the key provisions are, it provides fast-track citizenship to the non-Muslims. The non-Muslims here are Hindus, Sikh, Buddhists, Jain, Parsi, and Christian. These are the non-Muslims. And it has also the provision that it will extend citizenship despite residing only 5 years in the country, as against 11 years for the normal cases. So, if they stay in India for 5 years, they are extended, or they will be extended citizenship. The rationale cited, government argued that these are persecuted minorities in these countries, and thus there is a need for protection, for sanction, for refugee. And that is why, as a refuge, as India is a refuge historically to various persecuted minorities, government of India wants to extend this facility. Now, what are the issues with the law? Firstly, irrational discrimination. The assumption that is being made here is on the basis of religion. So we are categorizing the people on the basis of religion. And that too, we have excluded Muslims. The thing is that Muslims are part of Indian citizenship as well. And why there is a differentiation on the basis of Muslims and non-Muslims. And there are cases where even the Islamic states have persecuted Muslims within their countries. And Muslims have various sections. The Shia Sunnis is one of the ways through which we could categorize even the Muslims. Pakistan, being a Sunni majoritarian state, have persecuted Shias within its territory as well. And why only consider religion as a way to categorize people? We could also categorize on the basis of language. And here the question also arises, is why only these 3 countries? Why could we include Sri Lanka? As Sri Lanka has also given us historical examples where it has persecuted Tamilians. And this is far more blatant when compared to the way Pakistan has persecuted Hindus. And it is said that this persecution is still ongoing. Then the constitutional principles are also being violated here. Indian Constitution preaches right to equality under Article 14. And it is secular in terms of its declaration in preamble, as well as various articles, for example, 25 to 28 article, clearly states that India is secular, thus it doesn't differentiate individuals on the basis of religion. And it provides the freedom to practice any religion. And yet we are discriminating on the basis of religion. Then, the statelessness, the possibility of statelessness. Many are worried that the procedure might actually hinder the ability of Indians to prove that they are citizens of this country. Thus, documentation proof is required for them to firstly establish that they are citizens of this country. Or at the same time, documentation is required for them to show that they are persecuted and they are from minority sections from other states, that is Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Bangladesh. And thus, implementation itself is an issue. And the Muslims from India feel that they will be asked to prove that they are Muslims and they are from this country. And if they lack these documents to prove that they are from this country, then there is a possibility of deportation. Why? Because even Muslims who are persecuted from other countries have entered into India as refugees. Thus, we will not be able to distinguish between Indians and the rest. We have already seen the issues that we are facing in implementing NRC in Assam. And thus, that might also be replicated now. Why? Because the procedure and implementation itself is quite complicated. Then, the possibility of erosion of public trust. Why? Because we have seen widespread social and political protest against the CAA enactment by the parliament. And thus, Shaheen Bagh type incidents might repeat. Added to it, we have seen the aftermath of Shaheen Bagh incident, where Delhi riots have raged for days. Then, the regional concerns. The regional concerns are the Assam Accord. Because here, one of the issues that the Assam is facing is the demographic crisis. The demographic crisis is on account of influx of immigrants from Bangladesh. And in this case, it is not only the Hindus that have entered into Assam, but also the Muslims. Now, Hindus have entered into Assam, but the Assamese feel that they are dominating them and thus threatening their culture. Now, how to conserve the culture if the dominant Bangladeshi who speak Bengal dominate their life in terms of economy as well as culture, politics, etc. This is one of the issues faced by not only Assam but other states in the northeast as well. And these states, that is where, are against the implementation of Citizenship Amendment Act, despite the persecuted population being Hindus. And thus, how to convince these states to implement this act? Next is the procedural issues with the law. Firstly, the legislative process. We didn't clearly debate and consult with various sections of the society while formulating the law. And thus, our ability to implement the law is certainly going to take a hit. We need the accommodation of diversity. For that, we need consultation. Then only democracy will thrive in a country like India, where it has plurality of religion, language, etc. Then there is lack of clarity in implementation. The documentation proof required, as we already seen in the previous slide, is a major worry that is haunting the minority sections of this country. Then is the administrative preparedness. For processing millions of documents, it might be the documents that the minorities from other countries are bringing, or the documents within our country. Do you think our administration has the capability to process this document and establish proof? We already seen the NRC implementation issue in Assam. First, we might not have the wherewithal to implement this act in the first place is also another issue. In conclusion, Article 11 provides the power to Parliament to prepare the criteria for extending citizenship, and it is prepared on certain principles. We need not go into the details of these principles, but these principles are humanitarian as well as territorial as well. So, our extension of citizenship was based earlier on the basis of territory. If we are within the precincts of the geographical boundary of India, we have been extended citizenship. And now we are extending citizenship on the basis of religion. Of course, we cannot deny that many minorities from the Pakistan, Bangladesh, etc. have been persecuted. And that is one of the reasons why they have entered into India. But that doesn't mean that we need to discriminate on the basis of religion. What we require is to implement Article 21 in word and spirit. According to Article 21, it is not no citizen shall be deprived of his life or personal liberty. It is no person shall be deprived of his life or personal liberty. Hence, humanitarianism should be the criteria for extending citizenship, and thus determining the issues case by case and then extending citizenship rather than on the basis of one particular criterion. And thus that improves the stature of India at the global level. Why? Because many times these kinds of activities bring bad reputation to the country like India. This completes the article. Now let us look into another one. Government of India has recently announced that it is going to end the free movement regime agreement that it has with the Myanmar government. So in this article, we are going to see what this free movement regime agreement is all about and why India has decided to end this agreement. The title of the topic is Free Movement Regime at Myanmar Border to End Soon. Entry into India will need visa. So one idea that you are going to get from reading this title is, due to this agreement, people from India, people from Myanmar could enter into each other's territory without visa. Generally, we require visa to enter into any other sovereign territory, like for example, Myanmar. But this agreement provides us a leeway for certain regions to enter into Myanmar without visa. But that is going to end now. The relevance of the topic, relations with neighbor countries, and we are going to learn about the border security as well. The syllabus, current events of national importance. Now, let us dive into the articles. Before looking into the article, we are going to look into the previous year questions. First, with reference to locust policy of India, consider the following statements. the reason for bringing lookist policy is it is the activist policy under which Government of India has entered into free movement regime agreement with the Myanmar. For that purpose, you need to learn about the activist policy as well. Then, main question, cross-border movement of insurgents. So why we have brought this insurgents topic is one of the reasons for pulling away from this free movement regime agreement is the issue of insurgents. Nothing but the terrorists who use violent means to get their goals or to attain their goals. So as you know, we see in the news again and again the insurgency attacks in the northeastern states. So we need to reduce these attacks. One of the ways through which we could reduce is to see that there is no connection between the insurgents which are operating from Indian soil and which are also having links with the insurgents who are acting from the soils of Myanmar. Now the context. The context is simple. As we already seen, the Government of India has announced that it is going to end or it has the intention to abolish the free movement regime. And instead, it wants to see that it could be using fencing to stop the illegal movement that occurs once we curb the movement between the people. And in place of it, we are going to have a fencing system that will be smart and it will reduce the illegal movements that may occur in the future. Now, what is this free movement regime? It is an agreement between India and Myanmar. It is an agreement so that the people who are living in the border areas could travel without any requirement of visas. Why we allowed the movement is to see that their familial and ethnic ties could be continued. So what it shows is the people who are living in the border areas have familial and ethnic ties with the people who are living across the border. Why? Because earlier, as you know, we were under the colonial regime. That is a British regime. The Britishers are the ones who have decided the geographical boundary between India and Myanmar. It was done artificially without considering the possibility of the linkages between the people. And that is why there are many families which have ties across the border. And to flourish their ties, what we have decided is we have entered into the free movement regime agreement. That is also an indication that we want to improve the relation between India and Myanmar. So to pursue the people-to-people ties, we have entered into this agreement. So under this agreement, within 16 kilometers on either side of the border, the people could enter the other sovereign territory without the requirement of the visa. And they will be given border pass, which will be valid for 1 year. And this is as per the activist policy. We already discussed this activist policy in the prelims question where we have lookist policy. Now, after the regime change in 2014, the Union government has termed it activist policy, showing an intent to invigorate the ties. Act East, as the name itself suggests, we want to act east, that is, the countries which are in the eastern side of India. So we want to increase our network or connect with these eastern countries. Myanmar is residing in the eastern side of India, so we want to also connect and improve our relations with Myanmar. Myanmar is a gateway to the eastern countries. So in pursuance of that, we have entered into this agreement. But we are now deciding to end this agreement. Why? One reason is the possible misuse by the insurgent groups. As you know, there are multiple insurgent groups in the northeastern states. These cause havoc to the general public. At the same time, the law and order issue, the peace, etc., is being continually disturbed by these insurgent groups. So we want to reduce the activities of these insurgent groups. One way to do it is to stop them from misusing this free movement regime. For that, we need to end this free movement regime. Whenever we are launching attacks on these insurgent groups, they misuse this agreement and venture into the sovereign territory of Myanmar to protect themselves from Indian forces. So for that purpose, we decided to end this free movement regime. And also to curb the influx of illegal immigrants. Illegal immigrants means the people from other countries who want to reside in India illegally. Of course, All are welcome into this country, but through legal channels. But many times what they do is they use these channels to enter into our country illegally. And that ultimately causes demographic pressures on Indian side. If you look at the West Bengal, look at the Assam, one of the issues that they are facing is the influx of these illegal immigrants. We need to protect our citizenry from these illegal immigrants because of the threat they might pose to our culture, our economy, etc. So whatever immigration that happens to our country, it should be done legally. Then comes the issue of the refugees. Myanmar is reeling with the civil war on account of the military takeover over the civil region. So military there, which is called the junta, has overthrown the democratically elected government. From then on, the fights are raging on to control the power there. That is ultimately leading to many people fleeing the country for the sake of protection. Over 40,000 refugees sought shelter in Mysore, and around 4,000 refugees entered Manipur. So for this purpose, we need to end this free movement regime. So we also need to look at the current status of fencing. Only about 10 kilometers of the Manipur, which is sharing the border with the Mizoram, has been fenced. And if you look at the total length, the Manipur shares its border with the Myanmar is 390 kilometers, but only 10 kilometers of it is fenced. So this requires us to see that we need proper fencing. And if you look at the total length that India shares with Myanmar, it is 1,643 kilometers. The states which share the border are Mizoram, Manipur, Nagaland, Arunachal Pradesh. This is important from preliminary examination point of view. So for that purpose, we have started smart fencing. Under smart fencing, we want to see that the entire border of India-Myanmar is to be fenced, that too in a smarter manner. Smarter manner itself is an indication that we use modern equipments to see that it is fenced properly. And the target is we need to do it within 4.5 years. So this completes the topic. Now, let us look into another topic. This article is on America's actions with regards to fighting climate change. As you know, America is the topmost economy in the world in terms of GDP, but its contribution to fighting climate change is far lower when compared to its responsibilities. Why we are saying responsibilities here is because to run such a huge economy, we need to use resources, and the usage of resources leads to emissions. Thus, emissions done by the United States is far higher when compared to its actions to reduce these emissions in the future or to see that the world is adapting to climate change. Thus, it has the responsibility to commit for actions to reduce the impact of the climate change. We are going to compare it with India and try to assess it, and we need to show the world how to incorporate models from India. That is what we are going to see in this article. The title of the topic is America's Climate Failures, where we try to assess the failures of America. And the relevance to the topic, we're going to learn about the Kyoto Protocol, Paris Agreement, and India versus US climate actions, comparison between India and US. UPSC syllabus, environment, ecology, biodiversity, and climate change. We look at the previous year questions. We have a question on carbon credit. So similarly, you could expect questions on Kyoto Protocol or the instruments that are utilized to reduce climate change within these protocols. The context is simple. Recently, we have convened COP28 meeting in Dubai, that is United Nations Framework Convention of Climate Change. Within this convention, we have convened a meeting that has been completed. There various countries have pledged to reduce the impacts. United States pledge or its contribution or its ambition, which has been discussed in the COP28, is far lower. This is a worrying sign. Without the contribution of the United States, we cannot expect to fight climate change and reduce the emissions that are required for us to see that we could control the temperatures globally. If you look at the comparison with other countries, United States reliance on fossil fuels is over 80%. As you know, it is such a huge economy, and reliance on fossil fuels majorly to generate energy and to utilize the energy itself is a worrying trend. This, when compared to a country like India, whose reliance on fossil fuels is much lower when compared to United States. the pressure that India is facing from other countries to stop using the coal is increasing. But as we go along, we are going to see the comparison between India and United States and see whether India should bear the responsibility for the issues that are creeping up on account of United States actions. And we are also going to see about the disparities in terms of the financial commitments. That is, the funds that countries pledged or the countries are willing to give to fight the climate change. United States has only pledged $17.3 million to fight climate change. This is quite low when compared to its economic potential. And this fund is with regards to the loss and damage fund. Whereas countries like UAE, Germany, France, and Italy have committed to the tune from $100 million to $110 million. And even with respect to Green Climate Fund, the United States contribution is far lower. Now let's make up the comparisons between India and United States and try to assess its actions. Historically, if you look at the United States, it has emitted over 20% of the global carbon. If you look at the emissions starting from 1850s and from 1990s, it goes far higher. United States emissions are greater than 30%. Now, if you compare with India, it is just 4%. This is despite the fact that India's global levels of population is 17% of the global population. If you look at the per capita emissions, as per the Global Carbon Project, United States per capita emissions stands at 14.9 tons of carbon dioxide, whereas India stands at 4.7. And international agreements and protocols. The United States has not ratified the Kyoto Protocol, which is the first binding climate agreement that has been reached under United Nations Framework Convention of Climate Change. Added to it, the United States has rejoined the Paris Agreement, but its goals are far lower when compared to what is required to attain in terms of the climate change goals set by International Panel of Climate Change report. We have two goals like 1.5 degrees Celsius and 2 degrees Celsius. 1.5 degrees Celsius is the ultimate aim, which is definitely required for us to control the climate temperatures. 2 degrees Celsius is the bare minimum that we want to attain. And this is with regards to the pre-industrial levels. And to attain such ambitious goals, we require United States active participation. India, on the other hand, has ratified both Kyoto Protocol and Paris Agreements. If you look at the emission reductions done by the United States, it just stands at 0.4% by 2020 if you compare it with the 1990 levels. Whereas other Annex 1 countries have contributed to over 25%. The Annex 1 countries is categorization done under Kyoto Protocol. United States is also a part of the Annex 1 countries. Annex 1 countries are the industrialized nations, as the name itself suggests. These are the major contributors in terms of the emissions at the global level with regards to the greenhouse gas emissions. India, on the other hand, despite not being a part of Annex 1 countries, it has contributed significantly in reducing the emissions intensity. India has reduced by 33% of the 2005 levels by 2019. And this despite the fact that the actual goal is to attain this by 2030. So it was able to attain it 11 years in advance. Now, the fossil fuel dependency has already been seen. United States depends over 80% of its energy requirements on fossil fuels. On the other hand, India derives 44% from non-fossil fuels, and this exceeded its goal under nationally determined contributions by 2030. Look at the protocols that we have discussed. Kyoto Protocol is the first binding climate agreement under the United Nations Framework Convention of Climate Change, under which we want to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions, and targets have been set to the Annex 1 countries. We have dealt with Annex 1 countries in the previous slide. And this is legally binding on the countries which have agreed to this protocol. This also recognizes common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capabilities. As the name itself suggests, the common but differentiated responsibilities is nothing but it recognizes that the countries are different in terms of their capabilities to fight climate change as their socio-economic developments are varied. You cannot compare India with the United States in terms of its abilities to fight or its economical development to fight climate change. And Paris Agreement is also a binding agreement to internationally. It has a goal to attain below 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, as we already see. And the major goal is 1.5 degrees Celsius. We are far away from reaching these goals at the moment. In the conclusion part, let us bring in the models adopted by India. One is, it has brought in the International Solar Alliance, wherein it has an ambition to attract over $1,000 billion in investments by 2030. And also, it has started Mission Life, through which it wants to promote sustainable living practices. We cannot expect to reduce the emissions without adopting sustainable living practices, which has India initiated. Then, it is a part of First Movers Coalition as well, under which it wants to incorporate green technologies so as to reduce the emissions from steel and cement and other related sectors as well. This shows India's commitment and its philosophy in practice, that is Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, whole world is one. The United States also should incorporate Indian model so as to reduce the emissions and fight climate change. This completes the article. Now let us look into another one. This article is on the world's largest radio telescope. And why it is important is because India is going to be a part of this project. Added to it, the significant capabilities that it gives us to gaze the sky. That is why the title of the article is Another Eye in the Sky. So through this eye, we try to explore the universe which will not be easily visible to the common eye. And that too, to gaze to such a length to count the innumerable galaxies and also to learn the properties of the sources of the lights, sources of the radiations that we are going to try to calculate, that we are going to try to analyze through the reception of these radiations by this telescope. That is what we are going to see in this article. The title of the topic is Another Eye in Sky on Ground. India is now part of world's largest radio telescope project. So we have an eye on the sky, but it is on the ground. And through this, we are going to look into our universe. Relevance of the topic, India's space mission, syllabus, science and technology, recent developments. We have questions that are asked in the previous year examination of UPSC. Which of the following is or are cited by the scientists as evidence or evidences for continuous expansion of universe? So UPSC has the interest on space-related matters. For that purpose, you need to build curiosity on the space-related matters. Either it might be dark matter, black hole, pulsars, stars, galaxies, etc. You need to be in touch with the recent developments with regards to space missions as well as the space objects as well. The stars, etc., the space objects. You need to be aware of them. The context is simple. The Square Kilometre Array Observatory is the world's largest radio telescope project. And India has approved its participation to this project. Why? Because India's National Center for Radio Astrophysics has recently been awarded the project to build the software for running this largest telescope. India's approval could be gauged through its financial sanction of rupees 1,250 crore rupees for this project. Thus, it has become a formal member of SKAO Convention because it has ratified this SKAO Convention. This project ultimately aims to build the largest radio telescope. And thus, this decision was followed by India after the project has been awarded to NCRA. And Government of India has commended NCRA to be able to attain the project development contract. Now, about SKAO. SKAO is an intergovernmental organization. As the name itself suggests, it is intergovernmental. India is a formal member. Similarly, there are others who are part of this project. And this has headquarters in United Kingdom. Many times prelims questions are asked on the headquarters as well. If possible, try to remember it. In addition to India, there are 9 other countries who are part of this project. There is a necessity for you to learn about these countries who are part of this project. Australia, Canada, China, India, Italy, New Zealand, South Africa, Sweden, Netherlands, and the UK. These countries together try to build this project. And what it involves is array of antennas. So instead of concentrating on one particular antenna, here we are building array of antennas, and together we are trying to organize these antennas in such a manner that they could act as one big radio telescope. And thus our ability to gaze through the stars is far higher than compared to building one particular antenna. Thus the prospects and its potential are going to rise on account of this array of antenna that we are constructing under this project. Now let us look into radio telescope. It has a radio receiver and an antenna system. What it ultimately does is it collects the radio signals from the celestial objects, the extraterrestrial sources that are going to emit these radiations. And we are trying to collect these radiations from the extraterrestrial sources, which ultimately reach to Earth. And what we are going to do is we are going to analyze these radiations, thus through which we could understand the sky, that is, the stars, the pulsars, the black holes, the gravitational waves, etc. All the information is within these radiations. We need to analyze this information. Firstly, we need to have the ability to collect this information, which is given by this radio telescope, and then we try to process it through various scientific instruments. And this has the capability, this particular SKO has the capability to collect the information from 10 meters and 1 mm in terms of the wavelength. In terms of frequency, 30 MHz to 300 gigahertz. And it allows the exploration of the space as we have already seen in detail. Now the objective is we want to study the universe. In that process, we'll be able to learn about the origin, evolution of the cosmic magnetism. Added to it, we'll be able to learn about the dark energy and the evolution of the galaxies. We are still trying to understand dark energy in detail, and this project might help us to reveal the secrets of it. Also, the gravitational waves that we are recently focusing more upon, and the extraterrestrial signals to see if there is any sign of life in the universe. So we want to collect certain signals to assess the possibility of sign of life. The significance, if you look at Australian Square Kilometer Array Pathfinder, what we have seen is it was able to map over 3 million galaxies in a record time of 300 hours. So this itself is an indication of the prospects that lay in the near future after developing this particular project. Thus, our scientific advancements with regards to finding and understanding universe is going to rise by this particular telescope. Thus, it is important to understand as well as for examination perspective as well. This completes the article. Now, let us look into certain practice questions. Now, to the first question, consider the following statements. Myanmar shares border with 4 Indian states. This is true, as we already seen in the article. Free movement regime allows people in any part of Myanmar to cross into India without visas based on familial and ethnic ties. But this is not any part of Myanmar. We have seen that 16 kilometers being the length on either side of the border. So this statement is false. Which of the above statements is or are correct? A, one only. Now consider the following statement. The Kyoto Protocol only binds developed countries as they are largely responsible for the high levels of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. This is true. As we already seen, the Annex 1 countries who are assigned the responsibility, that is, the countries who have committed to the Kyoto Protocol are supposed to reduce the greenhouse gases. And these are industrialized nations. Second point, the Paris Agreement is aimed at limiting global temperature increase well below 2 degrees Celsius compared to pre-industrial levels. This too is true. We have seen 1.5 degrees Celsius being the ambitious target, but now we are targeting 2 degrees Celsius. At least a bare minimum of 2 degrees Celsius rise. Which of the statements given above is or are correct? The answer is C, both 1 and 2. Third question, consider the following statements. Radio telescope have advantage over optical telescopes when studying distant galaxies, black holes, etc. This is true. As we already seen that as the Australia-based telescope was able to discover many galaxies within the span of 300 hours, whereas optical telescope doesn't have such range. The reason given is they can detect invisible gases and can travel long distance. This too is true because it could travel millions of kilometers, in fact billions. So that is why they have wider range when compared to optical telescope. Choose the correct option based on statements above. Both A and R are true and R is the correct explanation of A. This is true. So the answer is A. Fourth question. Consider the following statements. Recently, Maldives has withdrawn from hydrology agreement that it has signed with India in 2019. This is true. United Nations Convention on Law of Seas is a governing regime of world's oceans and seas. This too is true. India's necklace of diamond is a counter strategy to China's interventionist strategy of string of pearls surrounding India. This too is true. So the answer is C, all the above. Fifth question, which of the following statements best illustrates the doctrine of implied limitation in the context of Indian Constitution? As the name suggests, it is the limitations upon something. This something is with regards to formulation of laws. And if you see the judgments given by the Supreme Court, a judgment which says that the basic structure is sacrosanct and any law passed by the Parliament has to be subjected to the basic structure. And thus, the answer is D. Laws that violate the basic structure of Constitution are invalid even if they are passed by Parliament. The answer is D. Next question. Examine the role of Citizenship Amendment Act 2019 in addressing the challenges related to statelessness faced by illegal migrants escaping persecution. Discuss its effectiveness in the context of India's broader commitment to humanitarian principles and international norms. So, in the introduction, write down the details of the legislation. We already seen about the Citizenship Amendment Act. This act was in fact passed to see that the persecuted minorities from the neighboring states of Pakistan, Bangladesh and Afghanistan are given refugee in India. Even though they crossed the borders illegally, we are still extending citizenship to them. Highlight the issues of statelessness globally and in India. In that context, mention the sections which are extended this privilege. In the body, write down the role of Citizenship Amendment Act in addressing this issue. Added to it, the provisions should be elaborated in detail. For example, the fast tracking of citizenship. If they stay for 5 years in India, that prior to December 31st, 2014, they are extended only if they belong to certain sections. But you have to also elaborate on the counters, that means the issues with the legislation as well, as it is only extended to specific. Thus, mention certain groups that are excluded. For example, they might be Muslims or others. The others might be in terms of linguistic minorities. And also the other countries like Sri Lanka, in which Tamilians are not mentioned exquisitely, despite we have seen the tragedy faced by the Tamilians in Sri Lanka. And also write down how CAA aligns with 1951 Refugee Convention, whether it passed the international conventions that are passed to extend citizenship to the refugees. And in the conclusion, write down there is a need for inclusive approach despite the goodness involved in Citizenship Amendment Act, which tries to take care of the persecuted minorities from the neighboring states. This completes the analysis. Please do like, share and subscribe to our channel. Thank you.